In this elimination of habitual error, undisturbed abundance, erroneous notions of meditation, practice of meditation, solitude, why insist on the bare necessities, why a solitary the mind, slow and patient the mind, slow and patient withdrawal, fixing the mind in the self, contemplating on the nature of the self, non-initiation of new thoughts, obstacles and means to overcome them, sleep, restlessness of the mind, perception of thought objects, inner compulsions, suppressed impurities, manifestation of subconscious thoughts, be a witness, enjoying the quietude, be alert. Result of meditation, supreme peace, supreme contentment, infinite, the supreme yogi, the world and the realized master, situations, inert objects, sentient beings, summary and meditation in 5 steps. Param Poojya Guruji quotes Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda's sentence: when the intellect has reached a state of supreme serenity, if the seeker can hold his mind in a sense of breathless expectation, alert and vigilant, ready to experience a spontaneous awakening, then the individual is at the highest state of meditative equipoise. Introduction. Through the history of mankind, manifesting in every age, golden or dark, there has been man's quest for knowing his inner self. Each generation has asked the same questions. The terminology may have differed, the language may have been diverse, yet the need to know has remained a constant factor, spurring him on in his search. Intrinsically, man has tried to find peace and happiness in the empirical world of objects. Disappointed with the outside world, he has time and again turned inward to seek this elusive peace and happiness. This turning within, this search for the truth of one's being, is the practice of meditation. The self manifests as confusion about one's duties, the goal of life, and the means of achieving it. It is characterized by the identification with the body and accompanying sense of doership and enjoyership. The solution. What is the solution of this universal problem? The solution lies in understanding the nature of the self or the absolute reality. When the self is recognized as unborn, undecaying, devoid of all notions of doership and enjoyership, all ignorance of the self ends. What should we do to gain self knowledge? First, the mind has to be purified and made single pointed. This can be accomplished by following the path of Karma Yoga or selfless action. With this quietened mind, one is equipped to take the second step of gaining the knowledge. With a feeling of humility, faith, and surrender at the feet of the teacher, a study of the scriptures is undertaken. Once we are established in even an objective turning it into more specific topics as follows. What is meditation? Who is the meditator? What is the purpose of meditation? What is means by the practice of meditation? What is meant by the practice of meditation? What are the obstacles? What are the obstacles one faces during the practice? What is the fruit of meditation? What is the vision of a jnani, the realized person? How does he conduct himself in the world? All the questions have been systematically answered. In Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Shri Krishna links I am the body, I am a man, I am a mirror. He abides in his true nature at all times of the day and night, as a waker, dreamer, or sleeper. He lives joyously reveling and established in the self. Meditation is a process. Such a seeker has to practice constantly and diligently to be aware of the self. The seeker from the longing of the objects of the world is turned to Bhagavad Gita 6.18. The practice of bring contemplation of the Supreme Self. When the mind is fully and firmly established in the self, plenitude ends. Object of meditation. The object of meditation is the Supreme Self, the pure consciousness. It is not different from the meditator himself. The meditator has to discover that the object of meditation is his own self by contemplating on the thought, I am pure consciousness. We have heard the often repeated story of the Guru and the 10 foolish disciples. The 10 had reached the side safely. Each one counted and came to the conclusion that the 10th man was missing. A well-wisher who happened to be passing by sized up the situation. He consoled the crying fools, saying, the 10th man, he is right here amongst you. Thus the 10th man discovered it abides in the self. His awareness of the self in the self by the self. Awareness of the self in the self by the self, and to get established in that awareness. Second topic, second chapter, meditator. Who is meditator? Who is a meditator? A meditator is the individual who has the notion of himself being the doer and an enjoyer. He imagines that he is a finite individual living in this world. Through the study of the scriptures, he has intellectually understood that he is the infinite actionless self, and yet feels he has no experience of it. When he practices meditation consistently and intensely, he absorbs his mind in its source and becomes established in the self. The pure consciousness, the self, is not the meditator. The physical body is inert and by itself is not the meditator. In between the two, there exists the mind, which identifies with the body, endowed with the reflection of the consciousness, created an entity I. This I, which falsely thinks that I am the body, mind, and intellect, is the meditator. The meditator then consistently practices and recognizes his own true nature through the thought, I am this pure consciousness. The meditator intellectually knows that he is the infinite self, and so is not a completely ignorant person, but he has to practice meditation as prescribed by the scriptures. Preparatory steps for being a meditator. Karma Yoga. The practice of meditation is possible only for a relatively purified and single pointed mind. The renunciation of the sense of leadership of actions and sense of enjoyership of fruits of action results in a pure single pointed mind. Such a purified mind alone can meditate on the self. Shri Krishna says, the man of action alone is the man of meditation and renunciation, and not one who has renounced the actions or one who tries to escape from the action. Bhagavad Gita 6.1. अनाश्रितः कर्मफलं कार्यं कर्म करोति यः स संन्यासी च योगी च न निरग्निर्न चाक्रियः. How should action be performed? What should be the attitude whilst performing action? Obligatory duties should be performed diligently and meticulously with total commitment. They should be undertaken joyfully without a sense of burden. They should be performed without depending upon the fruit of action in the form of material gain, appreciation, or recognition. Thus, performance of duties without selfish desires and to the best of one's ability prepares the seeker for being a meditator. This attitude is called Karma Yoga, renunciation of sankalpas. The restless mind does indeed get quietened through Karma Yoga, but the desires, the cause of the restlessness of the mind, remain intact. To remove the desires, we have to renounce the sankalpas, since the desires themselves arise from the sankalpas. Sankalpa is a fanciful imagination of an object. We imagine and superimpose happiness, sukha buddhi, reality, satya buddhi, and value, mahatva buddhi, on the objects, thus getting attached to them. This attachment further gives rise to desires. Thus, to remove the desires, we have to give up our fanciful imaginations. Moderation. Moderation in all walks of life helps the seeker not to get carried away by the cravings of the senses and to bring the mind under the discipline of the intellect. We must be measured and disciplined in our actions and responses to everything. Bhagavad Gita 6.17 युक्ताहार विहारस्य युक्तचेष्टस्य कर्मसु युक्तस्वप्नवबोधस्य योगो भवति दुःखः. Music is melodious only when the strings of an instrument like a violin have the correct tension, neither too loose nor too tight. Similarly, moderation is in everything is the golden rule. Gautam Buddha calls it the middle path or golden path. We have to learn to respond to the need of the hour and yet slowly turn the attention of the mind towards the self. Bhagavan Sri Krishna uses the word yukta in this sense of moderation. Bhagavad Gita 6.17 Devotion to the Lord, selfless service, and inquiry into the truth are other methods by which mastery over the mind can be gained, and a controlled and purified mind is one's best friend. If impure, it is one's worst enemy. Bhagavad Gita 6.6 Bandhuratmatmanastasya yenatmaivatmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve vartetatmaiva shatruvat. Thus, one has to lift oneself by one's own self-efforts. Bhagavad Gita 6.15 Yunjan nevam sadatmanam yogi niyatamanasah Shantim nirvana paramam matsanstham adhigacchati Uddharedatmanatmanam natmanam osadayet Atmaiva yatmano bandho ratmayo ripuratmayo ratmanaha ratmayo ripuratmanaha. We should not be looking down upon ourselves or condemn ourselves. We should realize that a mind under control is our best friend and an uncontrolled mind is our worst enemy. It is by proper understanding of its functioning that the mind can be controlled. The mind is always in search of happiness. When it experiences greater happiness, in renouncing sankalpas, it happily forsakes them. The mind's cravings for the transitory pleasures it imagines in the sense objects come to an end. It enjoys peace and joy and is happy to remain under control. The meditator, thus qualified with a quietened mind, is then ready for the practice of meditation. Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji said, "Truth is not anything separate from us. It is already present as the illuminator behind every thought in us. Ere long, indeed, very quickly, as soon as the mind is hushed, what is sought for outside in futile excitement is at last discovered in one's own pocket." Pure purpose of meditation: to be rooted and firmly established in one's true nature is the purpose of meditation. The practice of meditation helps to purify the mind by eliminating past tendencies and habitual errors. What is the true nature of the self? Bhagavan Raman Maharshi in his Upadeshasar declares that pure consciousness is the true nature of the self. What is the notion we have of ourselves now? The body, mind, and intellect, along with their functions and modifications, is what we consider ourselves to be. This to us is reality. It is these wrong notions about the self that need to be eliminated. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says that meditation is to be practiced for the purification of the mind and intellect. Bhagavad Gita 6.12. तत्रैकाग्रं मनः कृत्वा यतचित्तेन्द्रियक्रियः उपविश्यासने युञ्जात् योगमात्मविशुद्धये. 6.12. With a purified mind and intellect, the true nature of the self as pure consciousness is revealed. Purification of mind. The vasanas, or the inherent tendencies we carry with us, are reflected as the impurities of the mind. These vasanas manifest in the form of likes and dislikes for the world of sense objects. These impurities can be washed away or are removed by Karma Yoga, the practice of meditation. In Karma Yoga, the seeker performs action as dedicated dedication to the Lord. He acts without selfish motives, performing actions with an attitude of surrender to the Lord. This helps in removing the impurities of the mind. Purification of the intellect. Ignorance, doubt, and habitual errors regarding the nature of the self are the three impurities of the intellect. We will now see how they can be removed. Removing ignorance. Ignorance about its own nature, true nature, is one of the problems besetting the intellect. This is removed by study of the scriptures under the competent Guru. Through Shravana, listening to the teaching of the scriptures, the seeker learns that he is by nature existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchidananda. He is different from the body, mind, and intellect. Expelling doubts. Even after gaining this knowledge about the self, doubts abound. We are not convinced that I am bliss absolute. The scriptures declare that the self is unborn, imperishable, and is of the nature of bliss. But our experience tells us something different. We live with the knowledge that we are born miserable and subject to disease and death. The vision of Vedanta being diametrically opposed to our present experiences. We are not able to accept, digest, or appreciate the teachings of the scriptures. This leads to doubts which can be removed by manana, reflection. logical thinking, and reasoning based on the words of the Guru. Elimination of habitual error. The erroneous notion that I am this body, this world is real, and my joy lies in the world outside me is known as the habitual error. These impressions of the past remain deeply embedded in us. They are not eliminated by either Shravana or Manana. It is these strongly ingrained past notions that shakes us from the knowledge gained so far. We are caught unawares when something happens suddenly. The elimination of this habitual error is accomplished through meditation or nididhyasan. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says in Viveka Chudamani 267, even after the realization of the truth, there remains a powerful, beginningless, deep impression that one is a doer and enjoyer. It has to be conscientiously removed by living in a state of steady identification with the self. ज्ञाते वस्तुन्यपि बलवती वासनानादिरेषा कर्ता भोक्ताप्यहमिति दृढायास्य संसारहेतुः प्रत्यग्दृष्ट्यात्मनि निवसता सापनेया प्रयत्नान् मुक्तिं प्राहुस्तदिह मुनयो वासनातानवं यत्. Undisturbed abidance. Thus, when the impurities of the mind and intellect are removed by the practice of meditation, the ever existing pure consciousness is revealed to oneself. By one's own contemplation, we realize ourselves to be the infinite truth or Brahman. Once the knowledge of the self is gained, it is never lost again. The jnani abides in the truth, being alert and vigilant, making sure that he does not get distracted and become extrovert once again. All the spiritual practices we undertake are for the abidance of the mind in the self. Hridstale manasasthata kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nishchitam. Upadeshasar 10. Such abundance can be likened to the unflickering flame of a steadily burning lamp placed in a windless place. Yatha deepo nivatastho nengate sopama smruta yogino yata chittasya yunjato yogamatmanaha. Erroneous notions of meditation. Meditation is not meant for removal of ignorance and doubts about the self. Scriptural studies, Shravana and reflection, Manana, remove our ignorance about the self and doubts about the nature of the self. If we are ignorant and if we have doubts about the nature of the self, meditation will be difficult. Meditation is meant to gain abundance in the self. Meditation is not a practice for seeing or hearing anything new. During the practice of meditation, we may hear some divine sounds or get some divine visions. These can prove to be distractions and hurdles in the practice of meditation. They should be overcome by clear understanding of the purpose or goal of meditation. Meditation is not meant to gain siddhis, extraordinary powers of the mind. These too can prove to be an obstacle in the path of meditation if the mind gets attached to them. Param Poojya Swami Tapovanji Maharaj said, tranquility is the innate nature of all. It is a self-existent reality. Therefore, there need no striving to produce it. Abolish agitation and tranquility reveals itself. Effort is needed not to generate tranquility but to banish agitation. Fourth chapter, Practice of Meditation. The seeker who wants to be established in the knowledge of the self has to follow certain disciplines, practicing them regularly, riding the steed of yoga till there is complete and total abidance in the self. From the physical level, the disciplines reach more and more subtle levels. We now go on to discuss the details regarding the place of meditation, the seat of meditation, the attitude during meditation, and so on. If these are not understood, they can become stumbling blocks on the path of meditation. Solitude. Sant Jnaneshwar Maharaj has given a beautiful and elaborate description about the place of meditation in his famous book Jnaneshwari. He says one should preferably meditate in forest, not dense or infested with animals, with a river or a stream flowing nearby, and near a small beautiful temple. When we are learning to drive, the driving tutor takes you to a secluded place from the vehicular traffic and devoid of the movement of people. The likewise, when starting the practice of meditation, it becomes necessary to be in a quiet place, ekaki, relatively free from disturbances that are part and parcel of life. This does not necessarily mean that we give up one's duties and obligations to remain in isolation. The idea is to spend a few days in a solitary place, free from distractions, to help quieten the mind. One should go to such a place with the bare necessities, live without hopes and expectations, and keeping the mind free from past memories. Bhagavad Gita 6.10. Yogi yunjita satatam atmanam rahasi sthitah ekaki yata chittatma nirashira parigraha. Why insist on the bare necessities? Aparigraha. This becomes our test of our attachment, weakness, and so on. Living with minimum comforts, we come to discover our real strengths and weaknesses. Devoid of the trappings we are accustomed to, we discover how dependent we are on the comforts and luxuries we surround ourselves with. What is even more incredible is the fact that we can actually do without a lot of these comforts. For some of us, it may not be feasible to leave home and go away even for a few days. Solitude has to be discovered in the home itself. A little corner in the house or a room, if possible, can be set aside for the purpose of practicing meditation. We can retire to this haven of peace and solitude every day to practice being with ourselves. Why a solitary place? In meditation, we are trying to withdraw the mind from the world of outer objects and turn it to the self. At such a time, it is necessary that the mind's attention is not distracted and its energies not dissipated by interacting with the world of objects and beings. Our mind is the one entity which is totally neglected. So busy and involved are we with the hustle and bustle of living that we forget to spend time with ourselves. Solitude provides us the right atmosphere for introspection and for understanding the working of our mind. Relaxation, seat of meditation. Having created the necessary atmosphere of solitude, we have to sit on a proper seat asana for meditation. The place surrounding the seat of meditation should automatically inspire the mind into a state of quietude. It may not be possible for many to always find the ideal place or time for meditation. One can choose a neat and clean place in a quiet corner of the house and place the seat asana. The seat should be firm, placed neither too high nor too low, and it should be comfortable so one can sit at ease without disturbance. Bhagavad Gita 6.11. शुचौ देशे प्रतिष्ठाप्य स्थिरमासनमात्मनः नात्युश्रितं नातिनीचं चैलाजिनकुशोत्तरम्. Purpose and vision, posture and vision. On the seat of meditation, one should sit with the legs forming a firm base, the upper body erect, relaxed, and upright without any tension. The posture should be such that one can sit comfortably for at least 45 minutes without any movement of the body. The eyes should be still and the vision single pointed as though looking at the tips of the nose. Bhagavad Gita 6.13. Samam kaya shiro grivam dharayannachalam sthirah सम्प्रेक्षनासिकाग्रं स्वं दिशश्चानवलोकयन्. Where the eyes go, the mind follows. Yato drishtistato manah. If the eyes wander, the mind will also wander. This makes it difficult for the mind to remain still and single-pointed. Concentration of mind. Thereafter, the activities of the mind and the senses are to be controlled to gain concentration of the mind. The mind is by nature prone to wander in many directions, anekagra. Many a times it goes into a void or sleep, shunya, especially during meditation. This mind has to be trained to become single-pointed, ekagra, not allowing it to sleep or wander in the world of objects. Chanting a mantra is one of the means by which the mind becomes single pointed. Mind is a flow of thoughts. Instead of the mind flowing towards the thoughts of varied objects, things are lost in memories. The thought flow has to be channelized. Repetition of a mantra effectively channelizes the thoughts. Initially, the mantra is chanted verbally. As the mind gets quietened, we chant the mantra mentally. Ultimately, this mental chanting is also dropped by turning the mind's attention from the mantra to the one who is chanting the mantra. Thus, the body as well as the mind are sufficiently relaxed and one is ready for meditation. Right attitude. What should be the attitude of the meditator whilst meditating? Seeker of truth. The meditator should sit with an attitude of being a seeker of truth. Generally, we identify ourselves with the field of activity in which we are evolved to consider ourselves to be a part thereof as a householder, an officer, or an industrialist, or some such identity. If we sit for meditation with this attitude, then we will be meditating on these activities and not on the nature of the truth. Hence, it is essential that whilst meditating, we must sit with the attitude I am at present only a seeker of the truth. I am not a householder, I am not industrialist. When engaged in an important board meeting, we instruct the secretary not to allow any other role or to disturb the role of being the seeker of truth. During that time, the message to ourselves should be I am having meeting with my own self At present, I have nothing to do with the office, house, or factory. I am right now a seeker of truth. A reverential attitude of devotion is therefore brought by salutations to the Guru, meditating on the beautiful form of the Lord, chanting the mantra of the Lord. Salutations to the Guru. Kaivalya Upanishad says, prostrate mentally to your teacher and worship him with humility and love. Swagurum Pranamya. Bhagavan Shankaracharya explains in Viveka Chudamani, verse 34, the need for such salutations. Tamaradhya Gurum Bhaktya Prabhupa Prashraya Sevanaihi Prasannam Tamanu Prapya Pruchet Jnatavyamaatmanah. He has said that when the mind is tuned to the Guru's mind and listening to scriptures, the truth indicated by the words of the teacher will be understood. Meditating on the Lord. God is one, but He has many forms. After saluting the teacher meditates on any beautiful form of Lord that appeals to him. Ishta Rupa Dhyana. He prays and offers prostrations to the Lord and seeks His blessings to help him check the wanderings of this fickle and tricky mind. Chanting the mantra. After prostrations to the Guru and the Lord, the meditator starts chanting the mantra. This involves repeating the same name of the Lord of our choice with love and complete devotion. The details are referred to earlier in this section. When the mind is quietened and single pointed with the chanting, the attention is withdrawn from the mind and shifted to the one who chants the mantra, considering the self as the supreme. The mind constantly thinks about whatever it loves effortlessly and unconsciously. We must direct the mind towards the Supreme Self with love and devotion, considering the Self alone as the ultimate and the only goal of life. Some respect higher ideals intellectually but do not love them sufficiently. The entire love of the meditator's heart should be centered on the Supreme Self, and the Supreme Self alone is to be taken as the goal of life while sitting for meditation. Withdrawing the mind. Only when the mind is totally detached from the objects can it abide in the self. The withdrawal of the mind from the objects becomes difficult because of the distractions of the mind. The mind can be controlled by correct understanding of its working and through proper discrimination, eliminating the distractions of the mind. First and foremost, we had to understand why the mind is distracted. Does it get distracted because of the objects or the sense organs through which the objects are perceived, or the mind itself? The objects by themselves do not distract the mind. The five organs of perception too cannot be blamed for the distraction of the mind because they have a natural and inherent affinity for objects. The mind gets distracted by the mind itself. It is the mind which has developed fanciful imaginations, sankalpa, about the objects. It thinks that by gain of the objects it will get happiness and peace. It is the mind which has created likes and dislikes for the objects. These sankalpas and the likes and dislikes for the objects create the craving for them. The mind gets distracted because of its own fanciful imaginations about the objects, desires born of these imaginations, and the thought of the need to fulfill these desires. The mind, following the wandering senses, loses its discriminating capacity just as the unmanned ship is carried away by the winds to its own destruction. Bhagavad Gita 2.67. Indriyanam vicharatam yanmanon vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavamivambasi. The sankalpas, desires born of these sankalpas, and the need to fulfill the desires need to be renounced at least during the practice of meditation. Sri Krishna says all the sense organs should be controlled through our own mind only. The mind free of longing for all objects and desires born of sankalpas abides in the self. Bhagavad Gita 6.24. संकल्पप्रभवान् कामान् त्यक्त्वा सर्वान् शेषतः मनसैवेन्द्रियग्रामं विनियम्य समन्ततः. Whilst meditating, we need the understanding that this is not the time to allow the senses to wander. They are to be restrained. Slow and patient withdrawal. The power of the mind is understood only when we try to control it. We have to be alert and vigilant so that the seemingly controlled mind does not become extrovert again. It can never be taken for granted. It is better not to assume that the mind has been conquered. When the mind wanders to the objects, it has to be brought back from its wanderings slowly and patiently. Shanay Shanay Uparamet, Bhagavad Gita 6.25. How can the mind be brought back from the objects and be made to abide in the self? It can be done by understanding the actuality of the objects. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, every object has 5 aspects. Out of them, the existence, consciousness, and bliss aspects are the truth, whereas the names and forms with attributes are worldly aspects. Asti bhati priyam rupam nama chetyam shapanchakam adyatrayam brahma rupam jagad rupam tatodvayam. Drugdrishya Vivek 20. Names and forms of objects are only superimpositions on the truth. The substratum, there is discrimination between the truth, which is the substratum, and the superimposed names and forms should be undertaken. Having understood the actuality of the objects, the mind's attention can be withdrawn from the names and forms and shifted to the truth, the common substratum of all objects. The mind is a subtle and delicate instrument. The withdrawing and turning of the mind has to be done slowly and with infinite patience. It cannot be achieved by fighting with the mind. Fixing the mind in the self. The capacity to discriminate between the self and the not self is called sattvika buddhi. This is needed to absorb the mind in the self. The ability to hold on to a noble ideal without compromise is called sattvic dhruti. This is needed to hold the mind firmly in the self. Contemplating on the nature of the self. Contemplate on the untainted, the pure, the clear, the griefless, says the Kaivalya Upanishad 5. Rutpundarikam virajam vishuddham vichintya madhye vishadam vishokam. The nature of the self has been indicated by way of word pointers in the scriptures. The single pointed mind can be directed towards the nature of the self with the help of such pointers. These do not define the reality but indicate it from various standpoints. Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi has said, the mind gets this direct experience of the nature of the self as pure consciousness when the mind's attention is turned towards the self. दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मनः चित्वदर्शनं तत्वदर्शनम्. Upadesha 16. In Yoga Vasishtha and Tripura Rahasya, it is said that all people do have the experience of the self. In other words, the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. It comes like a flash at various moments in their life. The mind, when stunned by some happening, or when in a fit of extreme emotion, is said to be one with the self for that fraction of a second, but we do not recognize it because of the following reasons. We do not recognize the nature of the self as being devoid of the division of the seer and the seen. We are not alert enough, and after experiencing such glimpses, the mind starts running after objects and memories immediately. Once the attention of the mind is focused on the self, it should hold on to the thought, I am pure consciousness. By Sattvic Buddhi, one understands that all the experienced objects, senses, mind, intellect, are all only objects. This is not the nature of the self. All these are known to the subject, the self. The self is pure consciousness, in the presence of which the mind and so on function. The pure consciousness is totally independent of them. That pure consciousness am I. Thus, we have to hold on to the single thought, I, the self, am pure consciousness, with fortitude. Non initiation of new thought. Having fixed the mind in the self, no new thought should be initiated, na kinchidapi chintayet. When the mind is totally absorbed in the self, the thinker will not be there to entertain a new thought. But until the mind attains such an abiding state of absorption, there is always the possibility of creating a new thought. When the mind has become quiet and relatively absorbed, it can begin to think of this state. The quietude of the mind is objectified, initiating a new wave of thoughts, making the mind extrovert once again. Sri Gaudapada Acharya says, mind should not be allowed to objectify and enjoy the bliss of meditation. Through discrimination, it should be detached from that bliss. नास्वादयेत् सुखं तत्र निस्संगः प्रज्ञया भवेत्. Mandukya Karika 3.45. Thus, when the mind is controlled through proper discrimination, it abides totally in the self. Yada viniyatam tam atmanyevavatisthati. Mind kashayam, tendency to enjoy the quietude rasasvad. When the nature of these obstacles is understood, ways of overcoming them are easier to practice. लये संबोधयेत् चित्तं विक्षेपं शमयेत् पुनः. स कषायं विजानीयात् समप्राप्तं न चालयेत्. नास्वादयेत् सुखं तत्र निस्संगः प्रज्ञया भवेत्. निश्चलं निश्चरश्चित्तम् एकीकुर्यात् प्रयत्नतः. Mandukya Karika 3.45 and 44 and 45. From the state of sleep, we should again awake the mind. When agitated, we should quieten it. Understand that the mind is full of potential yet unmanifested desires. If the mind has reached the state of perfect equilibrium, do not disturb it again. The mind should not be allowed to enjoy the bliss of the state of absorption. It should be freed from attachment to such happiness. Through a steady exercise of discrimination, if the mind seeks to rush out into external objects, then it should be unified with the self again with self effort. Sri Gaudapadacharya has explained these obstacles and means to overcome them in a nutshell in these two verses. Sleep. Tendency to fall asleep is an impurity of the mind. It is caused because of physical and mental fatigue. Hence, we should sit for meditation when we are mentally fresh and awake, preferably in the early morning hours. To avoid the sleep caused by physical fatigue, adequate rest before meditation is necessary. We usually experience a state of thoughtlessness or quietude only when we are asleep. So, when the mind becomes relatively quiet during the practice of meditation, there is a tendency to fall asleep. There is almost an auto suggestion, it is time to sleep. Therefore, our attempt should be to make the mind quiet and thoughtless and yet not allow it to go to sleep. Sleep can be controlled through counter auto suggestion. Actual sleep is usually preceded by heaviness of the eyes, hazy vision, and yawning. If one is alert enough to notice these warning bells, an immediate suggestion to the mind can be made. I will not sleep. Right now, I am on the seat of meditation. I have to keep myself awake. We have observed the power of autosuggestion in our lives. When we go to sleep with the thought of getting up at, say, 2 o'clock, we wake up even without the help of an alarm clock, merely because of that thought being fed into the mind. On the seat of meditation, also, we can maintain a quiet, thoughtless, and sleepless mind by using the technique of autosuggestion. This will help us to remain awake and avoid sleep. Another method to avoid sleep is by holding the breath as far as possible according to one's capacity. It can be done either by breathing in and holding or breathing out and holding. When we hold the breath, each and every cell of the body being short of oxygen will demand the oxygen and thus denied to it, and the mind will immediately be awakened. Restlessness of mind. The second obstacle is restlessness or wandering of the mind, vikshepa. The mind is extrovert by nature. It wanders because of the perception of objects through the senses and the inner compulsions of the mind. Perception of objects. Whilst meditating, we usually close our eyes. The sense perceptions through the eyes, tongue, and skin as forms, color, and taste and touch may not distract the mind. But since the ears and nose are open, we can get distracted by sounds and smells from the surroundings. These distractions can be overcome with discrimination and dispassion. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, let the external objects remain outside. Don't allow them to enter the mind. Bhagavad Gita 5.27. Sparshan krutva bahir bahyan. When sounds and smell are perceived, there is no need to brood over them. Inner compulsions. The restlessness of the mind is caused by the memories of past experiences. This in turn is caused by impressions of past events, both good and bad, stored in memory. Extreme alertness has to be maintained to bring it back to the practice of meditation. We should not fight with the mind or condemn it when it is restless and wanders has to be meticulously avoided. It has to be trained in becoming single pointed through spiritual practice like repetition of the mantra mentioned earlier. Suppressed impurities. The third obstacle is the surfacing of all the suppressed impurities of the mind, kashaya, on the seat of meditation. Every experience in life is in the form of perception or thought. It leaves an almost imperceptible meditation impression in the mind. We are not even conscious of the impressions being created or redeposited at subtle levels. Manifestation of subconscious thoughts. When we overeat or when the stomach is upset, we feel nauseous, and undigested food is thrown up. It is unnatural for the system to throw up all the excesses. It is natural for the system to throw up all the excess undigested food. Now, an intelligent person would just flush it out without any second thought. In the same way, what happens to all the subtle thoughts consumed through sense perception and brooding over them? As long as the mind is active, we are not aware of these subconscious thoughts. They lie dormant in the mind. During meditation, the conscious mind is quietened. In such a state, those undigested thoughts and subconscious experiences start manifesting. This regurgitation of suppressed thoughts causes disturbance during meditation. Be a witness. As and when these thoughts surface, they have to be flushed out without becoming disturbed by them. They have to be understood as impurities of the mind. Sakashayam vijaniyat. We have to acknowledge them as undigested thoughts present in the mind. They had to be taken care of so far. They had not been taken care of so far, and now they are coming out. We should allow them to pass by without getting disturbed. We should observe the thoughts, remain a witness to them. Thus, the mind is quietened and freed from the impurity of suppressed thoughts. Enjoying the quietude. The tendency to enjoy the quietude of the mind during meditation, rasasvada, is the very subtle object. We are not even aware that it prevents the meditator from getting absorbed in the self. When the mind has become quiet, suddenly a thought erupts. What a nice and peaceful state it is! We have now objectified the state of quietude. This objectification initiates a new wave of thought patterns. It is this objectification which has to be avoided. Be alert. Realize that we have objectified the quietude. Then detach from that experience of enjoying that quietude. Refocus on the self, which is the witness of the experience of quietude. I am not a peaceful thought or a peaceful state, but the peace that passeth all understanding. I am peace itself. Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji said, the meditator, without getting up from his seat, dances without legs in the ecstatic joy where there is no mind to enjoy, and thunders forth where there is no mouth to talk. Result of meditation. Abidance in our own self is the fruit of meditation. Supreme peace, supreme contentment, and supreme happiness result from the abundance in our own nature. This is the supreme again, having gained which nothing else remains to be gained. Supreme peace, the peace of the self, is the supreme peace of liberation. Shantim Nirvana Paramam 6.15 Yunjannevam Sadatmanam Yogi Niyatamanasah Shantim Nirvana Paramam Matsamsthamadhi Gacchati. The flame of our mind of desires, मनोमयाग्निर्वहति प्रपंचम मनोमयाग्निर्वहति प्रपंचम विवेक चूड़ामणि 168 मनोमयाग्निर्वहति प्रपंचम. When the oil of desires is exhausted, the flame of the mind blows out. This state is itself the supreme state. Shri Krishna says, thus, always keeping the mind balanced, the meditator who has controlled his mind attains the peace abiding in the self, which culminates in total liberation. Bhagavad Gita 6.15. This peace is not the result of fulfillment of desires, but the result of total exhaustion of all desires. It is in the second chapter, Shri Krishna says that a man of wisdom is one from whom all the desires of the mind are gone. He revels in the self by the self. Bhagavad Gita 2.55 प्रजहाति यदा कामान सर्वान् पार्थ मनोगतान् आत्मन्नेवात्मना तुष्ट स्थित प्रज्ञस्तदुच्यते. This peace, Shanti, is gained as a result of the total exhaustion of all desires. It is such peace after gaining which there is no more restlessness. This peace is the way an induced peace could disappear, but the peace which is the natural state of one's being, only it is sought through the wrong means. Gaining objects, fulfilling of pleasures, acquiring wealth, and possessing power are some of the means employed to gain this peace. The peace gained through fulfilling desires is only momentary, and restlessness of the mind and its agitations return when new desires arise. How can there be happiness in the absence of peace? Ashantasya kuta sukham, Bhagavad Gita 2.16. One who has gained this supreme peace, in other words, one who revels in the truth, he alone enjoys true happiness. Bhaja Govindam 19. Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chittam Nandati 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 Eva. Supreme contentment. What makes us truly content and fulfilled in life? When the person sees himself in himself, by himself, when he becomes truly satisfied. Yatra Chaivatmanatmanam Pashyannatmane Tushyati. Bhagavad Gita 6.20. The meditator thinks that he is separate from the self, identifying with the body and mind. He is looking for the self outside himself. On being guided by the teacher, the meditator meditates upon himself. I am pure, infinite truth. He then achieves peace and contentment. In the story of the 10th man seen earlier, the 10th man was looking for the 10th man outside himself. Similarly, the individual thinking himself there itself is happiness, sukham. When the search stops, then the misery of the search ends. Unlimited happiness is experienced right here, right there. Infinite happiness. The happiness Sukham that we know now is as momentary thrills born of the contact of the senses with their respective sense objects, as emotions of love or as intellectual appreciations. Sense pleasures are like a healing wound. It is very satisfying, but alas, only momentary and to be definitely following by misery. All these contact born pleasures are the wombs of sorrow. Says Shri Krishna Bhagavad Gita 5.22. ये ही संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एवते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः. However, the happiness born of knowing the truth, the self, is everlasting because it is beyond the comprehension and scopes of the senses. Bhagavad Gita 6.21. सुखम आत्यंतिकम यत्तद् बुद्धिग्राह्यम अतीन्द्रियम वेत्ति यत्र न चैवायम स्थितश्चलति तत्वतः. How then does one knows the truth if it cannot be comprehended by the senses and the mind? Even though the finite thought cannot know the infinite truth, a special and unique thought known as Akhandakar Vritti is needed. It is a thought of complete identity. The experience is so overwhelming that even that thought gets absorbed in the truth. For a split second, it feels as if the truth becomes an object of that experience, as though something different from the intellect. But then the intellect itself melts there like the salt doll that tries to measure the depth of the ocean. For only a split second, the doll remains different from the ocean, but from the moment of contact, it starts melting and merging to become one with the ocean. In its intrinsic nature, it is not different from the ocean. It is like perceiving the midday sun, which cannot be perceived by any of the sense organs other than the eyes, and that too only very briefly. The eyes close of their own accord, yet the knowledge of perception remains. Similarly, this supreme truth is not experienced by the senses or the mind or by the usual thought of our intellect that objectifies all experiences, but by the thought of oneness. What remains when it merges is the truth alone, which is of the nature of pure bliss. What is the outcome of such bliss in terms of man's day to day life? In the experience, सीकरते त्रैलोक सुपासि सो सुखधाम राम असनाम अखिल लोकदायक विश्राम. Shri Ramcharitmanas 1.196.3. एषोऽस्य परम आनन्द एतस्यैवानन्दस्यान्यानि भूतानि मात्रामुपजीवन्ति. बृहदारण्यकोपनिषद 4.3.32. Sant Tulsidas Ji says, He who is the ocean of bliss or reservoir of happiness, of which a mere drop gives joy to the three worlds in whom all beings reside, and who is the abode of happiness. He is the Lord named Ram. Such bliss is sought even by the denizens of heaven like Indra, Thus, the result of meditation is the experience of such absolute and infinite bliss. The supreme gain. Realize that to be the truth or self, the attainment of which leaves nothing more to be gained, the blessedness of which leave no other blessing to be desired, and the knowledge of which leaves nothing more to be known. यल्लाभान्न परो लाभो यत्सुखान्न परं सुखं यज्ञानान्न परं ज्ञानं तद्ब्रह्मेत्यवधारयेत्. Atmabodha 54. The most valuable gift in life is a mind that cannot be disturbed by any disturbing circumstances. Whatever enters the ocean becomes one with it without causing any ripple in it. Like the ocean, the realized master remains always calm, unruffled, and undisturbed. He is at peace and always happy. In him do all objects, pleasures, and pains emerge without getting any disturbance in the mind. Gaining which there remains no gain equal or greater than it. Being established in the truth, he is unshakable even by mountain like sorrows. Bhagavad Gita 6.22. यम लब्ध्वा च परं लाभं मन्यते नाधिकं ततः यस्मिन् स्थितो न दुःखेन गुरुणापि विचाल्यते. This is the supreme gain of meditation. It is said, the knower of truth or self attains the supreme. In any worldly gain, there always remains something greater to be gained. The sense of insufficiency does not go, and the need for attaining something further remains. But once infinity is attained, there remains nothing more than can be or needs to be attained. Worldly gain is subject to loss. Attaining the infinite truth or self is inclusive of all finitudes and hence never subject to loss. In fact, all the happiness gained from objects is only a manifestation of truth, of the truth. In Taittiriya Upanishad, it is said that everybody's joy, including that of the mains, deities, demigods, and so on, is experienced by the realized master without having to go to any of those heavenly realms. Freedom from sorrows. All beings seek to avoid sorrows and seek happiness. This is because we are by nature bliss alone. This fact is not known and therefore we search for what we already are. We identify with our body, mind, and intellect. These are indeed only objects of perception and knowledge. They are not the self. They are the instruments through which the self functions. It is due to this identification that all the limitations, afflictions, modifications, and sorrows of the body, mind, intellect are taken to be my sorrows. When we dissociate from our association, identification with the sufferings, we experience bliss. This process of dissociating with what we are not and associating, uniting with what we are is called meditation. Dukkha Sanyoga Viyogam Yoga Saudnitam. A result of incomplete effort. It is but natural for the meditator to have doubts like what will happen if I die before attaining the truth. What is my efforts? What if my efforts are distracted, insufficient, or inconsistent? Will my efforts in meditation be wasted? Will I have to start from scratch in the next life? We are so conditioned by gross results that we do not appreciate there are also subtle results. The unseen result, Adrushtafala, is not recognized by us. Bhagavan Shri Krishna assertively says, the efforts put forward will never go waste. Bhagavad Gita 6.40 from the fear of death and anxiety. A practitioner gains a better life and a conducive environment to continue his practice in the next life. The wisdom gained is never lost. The desires which are unfulfilled get fulfilled in heavens, and once these are exhausted, he will be reborn to continue the practice of meditation. Bhagavad Gita 6.41 and 42 says he will ultimately gain his goal of the Supreme. प्राप्य पुण्यकृतां लोकामुषित्वा शाश्वते समाः शुचीनां श्रीमतां गेहे योगभ्रष्टोऽभिजायते अथवा योगिनामेव कुले भवति धीमताम् एतद्धि दुर्लभतरं लोके जन्म यदीदृशम्. Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmaya ji said, the man of realization lives in total freedom at all times, under all conditions and circumstances. Whatever comes to him, good or evil, he meets them heroically, seeing in and through them all the same one infinite self. The vision of the realized master. The realized master experiences that the self in me is the self in all, and that there is the self truth which pervades the entire creation. The world is not seen different from him because he has realized his oneness with creation. His vision of the world is therefore totally different from that of an ignorant person. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, the truth am I, and the whole world is an expression of that truth or consciousness. Brahmaivaham jagatcha sakalam chinmatra vistaditam. This vision of the realized master, the meditator who has attained the truth, is different from that of the seeker, because the seeker perceives the multiplicity of names and forms and gives validity to the multiplicity. Inquiry into oneness. The basic duality which is universal is that of the subject and object. At present, our understanding of the subject and object is that I, the subject, is a conscious entity. The world of experience, the object, is inert matter. The world appears as being different from me. The inquiry into the nature of the self and into the nature of the world have to be undertaken to understand the vision of oneness of a realized master. Who am I? Inquiring into the nature of the self, we conclude that the body, the pranas, the senses, the mind, the intellect, and the ego cannot be I, the self. I am the witness of all these. Since I is the subject, anything other than I, all else must be the object. Hence, I, the self, cannot be any of these individually or all of these put together. The body is only an object of knowledge, it is object of consciousness, as are the senses, the mind, and so on. All these are only conditionings, upadhis, or instruments through which I experience the world. These cannot be I, the self who functions through them. By negating what I am not, the body, mind, and intellect, I come to realize what I am. I am the witness of all. I am the pure consciousness which is my true changeless nature. What is this world? On inquiring what is the nature of this world, I come to the same pure existence consciousness as being its source, its very basis. The world is made of objects with names, forms, and attributes. Names are given to forms with attributes. For example, a ball is a round shaped object that bounces. What is the substratum of the forms? No object or form can exist without existence. Hence, the pure existence consciousness alone is the substratum. For example, the waves of the ocean are nothing but water appearing in that particular form. Water is the substratum of all the waves, and all the waves are superimpositions on water, the substratum. Water alone exists, and nothing other than the water exists as waves of the ocean. Similarly, existence alone manifests in all the names and forms. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says that the creation is the superimposition of names and forms on the one reality, the infinite, just as the wave, foam, and so on are superimpositions on water. सृष्टिर्नाम ब्रह्मरूपे सच्चिदानन्दवस्तुनि अब्धौ फेनादिवत् सर्वनामरूपप्रसारणा. Durgdrsha Vivek 14. The world has an infinite expanse with innumerable objects. The cause of this world of objects with names and forms cannot be finite. It must be infinite. Through inquiry, the substratum of the world is revealed as pure existence, consciousness, and infinite truth, or the infinite truth, identity. And inquiry into the nature of the self, Atma, reveals to be the pure reveals it to be pure existence consciousness. Similarly, an inquiry into the nature of the world reveals that the substratum of the world is pure existence consciousness, Brahman. There cannot be two existence consciousnesses. Hence, the substratum of the world is not different from the self. Thus, the identity of truth, Brahman, and the self, Atma, is established. This is why the realized master perceives the world as not different from himself. Since the self is not different from God, Ishwar, the realized master sees God in all beings and objects. Sri Krishna says, "He who has gained this vision of seeing me, the infinite, in all and all in me, the infinite, is not lost to me, and I am not lost to him." Bhagavad Gita 6.30. The Lord is never away from such a devotee, nor is the devotee away from the Lord, since both have merged to become the one. सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः. यो मां पश्यति सर्वत्र सर्वं च मयि पश्यति तस्याहं न प्रणश्यामि स च मे न प्रणश्यति. World is the self for a jnani. In the words of Sri Krishna, a jnani who has merged his mind in the self sees his own self seated in all beings and all the beings in the self. He sees the self in all beings as their substratum, adhisthana, and sees all the beings as the superimpositions, adhyasa, on the self. Since he has risen above the identification with the body, mind, intellect, His vision too is subtle, and so is his perception of the world. Even though the perception of the world of names and forms remain the same, his vision of the world is different. From the standpoint of the truth, there is only the self manifesting as different forms. Take the example of gold in various ornaments. All the ornaments are superimposed names and forms with gold as their substratum. The gold ornaments, names and forms of a ring, a bangle, a necklace cannot exist without the gold. We therefore conclude that gold is the substratum of the ornaments. The gold and the gold ornaments are not different in essence, they are one. Similarly, the self or truth and the world of names and forms are not two different entities. The realized master does not see the world and the self as two different entities. The whole world is recognized as his own self expressing in and through. All the forms sarva bhutastham atmanam ikshate. The self is the substratum and support of every being and object. Vision of sameness. The realized master who recognizes his own self in all beings has the vision of sameness, samadarshan. The vision of sameness does not manifest as long as the differences perceived are considered to be real. Based on this knowledge that the self alone appears as the world of names and forms, there is sameness towards all objects and beings. He hates none and loves all as his own self. He sees all as the reflection of his own self. Then for whom can he grieve and to whom can he get attached to? In the Rudra Suktam, the sage offers salutations to all forms of life, birds, animals, humans, beings of all ages, recognizing them as the auspicious Shiva. Vision of oneness. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, "He who, being established in oneness, worships me who dwells in all beings, that yogi abides in me, whatever be his mode of living." Bhagavad Gita 6.31. सर्वभूतस्थितं यो मां भजते तत्त्वमास्थितः सर्वथा वर्तमानोऽपि स योगी मयि वर्तते. This vision is akin to our loving and serving our own body as I see me in each and every part of the body. He worships the truth through his every action. His mere look is his worship. He does not have to do anything else. Such worship expressing through a life of love and service is seen in all the great saints and sages in our society. An incident from Sant Eknath Maharaja's life will best show how this vision of oneness, Sarvatma Bhav, expresses as compassion and service. Sant Eknath Maharaj was on pilgrimage travelling from Kashi to Rameshwaram. Following the customary practice, he was carrying holy Ganga water from Kashi to perform the worship Abhishek of the Lord of Rameshwaram. On the way, he happened to see a donkey dying of thirst. Despite objections from fellow pilgrims, without hesitation, he gave the donkey the holy Ganga water meant for the Abhishek of the Lord. When asked why he did so, he said, "My Lord Rameshwar is here." Eknath Maharaj received the Lord's vision, darshan. there itself. This vision of oneness does not stop with living beings alone, it also includes the insentient objects. This vision of oneness of the self never fades away. Whatever the realized master may be seeing, doing, he remains ever established in that. This state is called Jivan Mukti, liberation while living. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, when the body identification is dropped and the Supreme Self is realized as one's own self, then wherever the mind goes, the vision of the truth is experienced. देहाभिमाने गलिते विज्ञाते परमात्मनि यत्र यत्र मनो याति तत्र तत्र समाधयः. Also he says, he who revels in the truth, he alone rejoices, whether he is in meditation or with pleasure, whether he is alone or in a crowd. His state has been described as a natural state of absorption, Sahaja Samadhi. आत्मौपम्येन सर्वत्र समं पश्यति योऽर्जुन सुखं वा यदि वा दुःखं स योगी परमो मतः. Sri Rama faced all the challenges, ruled over his kingdom, attended to matters of state, ever in his divine state. The Supreme Yogi. A yogi is not just one who can sit in intricate postures or sit still for hours in a meditation posture. Sri Krishna says, he who through the oneness or sameness of the self sees equally everywhere, be it pleasure or pain, he is regarded as the Supreme Yogi. Bhagavad Gita 6.32. He is therefore sensitive to the feelings of joy and sorrows of others. He puts himself in the other's shoes and understands them. He never imposes his thoughts on others. He lives a life based on the principle live and let live. He understands that each one has his own ideas, goals, and ambitions, freedom being most important to them. He respects others' right to it. Most important to him, he respects others' right to it. This understanding expresses well as compassion, love, and service towards all beings. Param Poojya Gurudev Swami Chinmaya ji said, a man of realization instinctively becomes a lover of the whole universe, the world, and the realized master. A realized master is at peace with himself and the world. This peace is not the dull peace of sleep or the uneasy calmness that exists before the storm. It is the dynamic peace of having realized the changeless truth of this ever-changing world. The state of mind of such a realized master is described by Swami Vidyaranya. Maya megho jaganniram varshatvesha yatha tatha chidakashasya no hanirnalabhaiti hanirnavalabhaiti sthitihi. Panchadashi 8.75. Even if the clouds pour down torrential rain as and when they please, they cannot wait or taint the space. Similarly, even if the clouds of Maya pours down the waters of worldly existence, the space of consciousness self never gets affected by them. What is the vision of the realized master in various situations towards other living beings and with inert objects? In all situations involving pairs of opposites, namely heat and cold, joy and sorrow, honor and dishonor, the realized master remains balanced and undisturbed. Bhagavad Gita 6.7 जितात्मनः प्रशान्तस्य परमात्मा समाहितः शीतोष्णसुखदुःखेषु तथा मानापमानयोः. Heat and cold can be considered experienced only when a person is identified with the body or when he is conscious of the physical body. They therefore represent all experiences at the physical body like aging, disease, and death. Joy and sorrow are experienced in the mental level. When all the objects, things, and beings are conducive or to our liking, we are happy. When they are not conducive or not to our liking, we are unhappy. विषयाणाम आनुकूल्य सुखी दुखी विपर्यये. Vivek Chodamani 105. In other words, we become happy or unhappy only due to the likes and dislikes of our mind. No external situation can really make us happy or unhappy. Our happiness or lack of it depends upon how we look at it. The same thing can cause joy at one time and sorrow at another based on our likes and dislikes. Joy and sorrows are experienced because we give importance to or we are attached to things, beings, and situations. Likewise, honor and dishonor are intellectual judgments. We consider one thing as honor and something else as dishonor. Despite the experience of heat and cold, worldly joys and sorrows, honor and dishonor, the realized master is ever at peace, enjoying the bliss within, and is therefore not disturbed. He does not give worldly experiences any reality or importance. Inert objects. The realized master maintains the attitude of sameness towards a lump of clay, a piece of stone, or gold. Bhagavad Gita 6.8. ज्ञान विज्ञान तृप्तात्मा कूटस्थो विजितेन्द्रिया युक्त इत्युच्यते योगी समलोष्टाश्मकाञ्चनः. He understands that all these are inert, each having its specific value, purpose, and importance. The material things are necessary for sustaining the body and transacting with the world. He gives importance to them according to their need and purpose, however, does not add any subjective value to it. He therefore is ever at peace in their gain or loss. Sentient beings. The realized master, maintaining an inner equipoise, is the same towards his well-wishers, friends, enemies, those who are indifferent or neutral, or those who hate him, those related to him, and righteous and the unrighteous. He indeed excels. Bhagavad Gita 6.9. Surun mitraryudaseena madhyastadvasya bandhushu स्वादुष्वपि च पापेषु समबुद्धिर्विशिष्यते. We understand that fire is hot, ice is cold, salt is salty, and sugar is sweet. We use them as they are. We do not try to change their characteristics or complain about them. We accept them as they are. We do not expect them to be other than what they are. This attitude is termed as equanimity. The realized master understands and accepts all as they are, with their peculiarities and specialities. Their nature and character and idea deals with them according to the situation, time, and place. One who does not question why, who does what they do, understands and accepts all, remains equanimous. Kaha kim karma iti avyapruta buddhi Shankara Bhashya. We have a lot of expectations from people. We are disturbed not because the person behaves in a particular manner, but because our expectations are not met. But the realized master accepts everyone as they are without any expectations. He is therefore same to all and his mind remains equanimous with all. Equanimous also means maintaining the same attitude of love and affection towards anyone. Even though people behave differently towards the realized master, he treats everyone with love and affection as he sees all essentially as his own self. He is not afraid of any mental fluctuations because he knows that all actions and thoughts are taking place in consciousness. Saint Kabir says, I am the space of consciousness in which the aeroplane of mind is flying here and there. Where can the mind go? Can it go beyond the space of consciousness? Even the restless wandering of the mind is the reveling in the self alone. A realized master transacts in the world with equanimity of mind. A seeker practicing meditation also must strive to acquire the and cultivate equanimity. Our goal should also be to develop an attitude of sameness towards things, beings, and situations, with the understanding that worldly differences have their relative place and reality. We should see the oneness underlying all differences. We will then remain unaffected and ever free. Summary. Meditation is the effortless abidance in one's true nature. It is the natural state of a realized master. For a seeker, meditation means the practice of meditation. It is the repeated endeavor to restrain the mind from its habitual wanderings and establishing it in the self. It is the contemplation on the nature of the self by continuously maintaining the thought, I am pure consciousness, Sajatiya Vritti Pravaha, to the exclusion of all other thoughts. For that, the mind should be quiet, alert, and vigilant. Such a mind can easily meditate. A sincere, perseverant, patient, and perseverant, a sincere, perseverant, patient, and cheerful practitioner finally realizes the infinite truth as his own self. To him, everlasting happiness becomes evident. It manifests in his heart effortlessly. He sees the self in him as the self in all. He maintains an attitude of sameness towards all beings and objects of the world. It is expressed as supreme contentment and peace within himself and as love towards all outside. He is totally fulfilled and remains ever in the supreme state. Meditation in 5 steps. First, seek solitude. Through Karma Yoga, prayer, and satsang, prepare the mind. Seek solitude. Make the mind free of worldly desires and possessiveness. Know the nature of the self to be bliss and desire to experience it. Select a clean and solitary place for meditation. Relax. Choose a comfortable seat. Sit erect in a comfortable posture. Close the eyes lightly. Relax the body completely by focusing the attention on every limb and relaxing it by autosuggestion. Have the right attitude. Mentally prostrate to your Guru with reverence. Sincerely pray to God and seek His blessings. Make the mind cheerful. Bring the attitude of a sincere seeker of truth. Drop all other identities. Determined to realize and get established in the truth. Withdraw the mind. First, withdraw the senses from the world of objects by not contemplating on the sense stimuli you receive from the world. Through discrimination, drop all wanderings of the mind into the past or the future. Bring the mind to the present moment. Make the mind single pointed by chanting Om first loudly and then mentally. Remain totally aware of the chanting. Shift the attention from the chanting to the silence underlying it. Fix the mind in the self. With a mind thus made quiet and single pointed, contemplate on the self, which is the witness of this quietude. Take the help of the spiritual pointers like I am unattached, I am pure consciousness, to contemplate and fix the mind on the self. If the mind wanders, make it quiet and patiently fix it in the self again. Once the mind gets absorbed in the self, do not initiate any new thought, do not think, do not try to do anything, do not try to become anything, just be. Om Tat Sat. This is reading of the book called Meditation a Vision by Param Poojya Guruji, Swami Tejomayananda Ji. Hari Om. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj Ki